Hello and welcome to Who Dares Rolls TV. I am your host, Mike B. Here we are again. I'm going to run through a list. I thought a top 10 list sort of thing, because we haven't done one of them for a little while. So this is going to be my top 10, or my 10 comics that I would like to see made into a decent board game. I'll subtext that now. A decent board game. So yes, that is what this is going to be. So I'm going to run through, not only will I say that I'm going to run through some really great comic books that will make wonderful board games. Most of these, if not all of these, really at some point you should try and get a chance to read, because they're nearly always very good, if I say so myself. So yes, I think we'll just dive on, really. I won't give any more preamble to that. I'll start at number 10. Number 10, we could have a number flash up here. So number 10, and I haven't got the comic book here actually, weirdly enough, is Preacher. Preacher by Garth Ennis and Steve Dillon. Sadly, Steve Dillon passed, I think it was about a couple of years ago now, but a fantastic artist. Ennis is a writer who's done a lot of stuff in his time, usually very violent, gritty comics. He's not afraid of a swear word. I can see a lot of his attention, like he enjoys. I enjoy a lot of his stuff. So Ennis, this was his breakout thing. He did it was kind of launched Vertigo Comics for DC, which was a line that ran for a good few years until they killed it off for some reason best known to themselves. But there was a lot of indie, a lot of British talent in it. Very good stuff. Anyway, Preacher is it's an epic, sprawling, all-encompassing, I think it was about a 70-odd issue arc of Jesse Custer, his Irish vampire friend, and his gun-toting girlfriend Tulip, Cassidy the vampire. What it was, Jesse is a preacher. He's in a down and out back in somewhere in Texas, preaching his stuff, and he is hit by Genesis, which is essentially the offspring of a demon and an angel, which on all intents and purposes gives him the word of God, i.e. if he tells you to do something using the word, you're going to do it. You have no other option. And what we had was this sprawling Odyssey type epic of his journey to find God. Now, I'm not by any realms of religious person. Like anything, like the Bible or any other religious text to me, they're a work of wonderful fiction. But yeah, Preacher was an astounding read. It was gritty, it was violent, it was rude. It did come off the cusp of the Tarantino-esque, around about Pulp Fiction, so when Tarantino was on his height at that point in time, so a lot of that style of that sort of witty repartee in there. But it's a good old blood-drenched fists and fisticuffs and bros. It's all about the man love and girlfriends, and it's a cracking read. It's probably one of my all-time favourite comic books, the whole series. Very much Western influenced, did a lot of Clint Eastwood's thrown in there to the mix. There's a Saint of Killers, who this unstoppable Wild West gunslinger with a great backstory, a host of villains that you can all hiss and curl at, including the Grail, which is a secret organisation which kept the bloodline of Christ running for millennia, run by a crazed German called Herr Starr. Brilliant stuff. I mean, it just this huge cast of characters, an epic story. It's one of the few comic books that I've read that some issues of it ended on a cliffhanger where I was left mouth agape, like, oh my god. And right towards the very end, it's a highly emotional climax. It's one of the rare comic books where I've really finished when I read those last couple of issues. That I was like, wow, you know. Brilliant stuff. If you can get around the rudeness, the nudity, the stuff that's going on in this thing, it's not subtle, but my god, it's a good read. There's a TV show based on it. Amazon did. In my opinion, it isn't great. It's a nod towards the comics. It doesn't come close to the majesty and the epicness and the greatness of the comic series, how it worked. It's okay. If you really, really, really cannot be asked to read the comic books, then okay, the TV series. But just be aware that you are missing out on pure comic book gold. So a board game of this, how it would work, I have no idea. But there's this all-encompassing sort of story. There's something there that could be just majestic. Don't know how it would work. As I say, have no idea how it format would work in, how it would work. What would I like to see? I don't know. But yes, it's a license and a series and a thing that I adored. I want more of it, and to have a tabletop version of it would be something. It would probably be a pale imitation of what the comics did. But yes, Preacher. If nothing else, I've put on the list so that you read it. So there we go. So there is number 9 on the list is a comic book that I have got here in front of me. One of them is The Goon by Eric Powell, who does all the writing and the drawing himself. The Goon is kind of set in a bit of a Depression era America. It has definitely got a lot of DNA from Hellboy to a certain extent in this, though it's a different beast. It kind of out Hellboy's Hellboy to a certain extent. It's like a mob enforcer, the Goon in question, and his sidekick, and it's just a host of weird, strange city stuff, stories, sprawling monsters, zombies, things. It's funny, it's violent, it's dark, it's strange, it's twisted, it's quite a one-off to a certain extent. The Goon is, again, a fabulous read. There's a long gestating David Fincher produced animated movie at some point. They did a Kickstarter for about 5 years ago, maybe longer, which is still not surfaced. Maybe one day it will. But yeah, this just like this an endless stream of freaks and weirdos and just strange stuff. Yes, The Goon, fabulous, weird, strange, well worth dipping your toe into. The Goon. Again, this could work and probably something like a big sprawling, like almost like Cool Mini or Not kind of project, just like big minis, because there's just so much cool characters and stuff in there. Lots of dice chucking. I see it as an Ameritrash sort of crossed with some of FFG's sort of Cthulhu mythos stuff, but just its own world. Wonderful. You could just do a big sprawling eldritch horror style sort of, but set in a city type style board game with maybe some mob enforcers and stuff going on. I mean, there's a lot of meat there to get your teeth into. That would make a cracking thing. Cracking story, I tell you. Cracking book. But yes, The Goon by Eric Powell. And again, should read that. Next up at number 8. Number 8 on the list is Harry 20 in the High Rock, which is an old 2000 AD strip. Sadly, this is now out of print. You can't even get the collated edition of it. As a child, growing up in my youth, this was one that really took my attention. It's probably, I've read it since. It's not the best comic ever, but at the time, this was brilliant. This is a prison escape story, except the prison they're escaping from is in space, and it's kind of tricky to escape from a prison in space when you've got the spacesuits or ways of escaping it. But yes, essentially, it's kind of that. It's kind of Alcatraz, but set in space. All those good prison escape movies you always used to like. Evil villains, evil warden and guards, and all the stereotypical prisoners you would like. Then this is just crying out for like Escape from Cold style prison escape plan and get out type thing, but with that sci-fi aesthetic and early 80s 2000 AD stuff. It's a good read if you could track it down to. It's all right. Okay, it's not fabulous. It's not by definitely on par with some of the other stuff I mentioned in this thing, but it was something that really gripped my attention and would work, I think, very well with that theme in a great board game version. So yeah, Harry 20 on the High Rock by Jerry Finley Day and Alan Davis did the art. Jerry Finley Day was behind the creation of Rogue Troop as well, which has had a board game many years ago. Next up is 30 Days of Night by Stephen Niles. Now, this is great. This is made a movie of this, actually. 30 Days of Night is a cracking story. It's essentially about Alaskan town of Barrow, which at certain points of the year falls under 30 Days of Night, which unfortunately coincides with an army of vicious, bloodthirsty, violent, horrible vampires, real nasty vampires, not vampires like Lestat and that sort of Anne Rice vampires, but these are brutally horrible, violent vampires turn up to just basically an all-you-eat 30-day night buffet. It's a great story, really well done. The movie's not bad, actually, with Josh Hartnett come out in it. It's right, I've seen it for a few years, but it's not a bad movie. I don't think the sequel was any good. But 30 Days of Night, yeah, again, I mean, we're looking probably a Ameritrash type style of game, board game of you possibly defending over a period of the 30 days in the town with the vampire hordes attacking. It's definitely a great setup. It was a great setup for a movie. It's a great setup for a comic book. Maybe they could keep some of the aesthetics of the comics because it's got that kind of freaky Ben. I think it was Ben Templesmith. Yes, it was Ben Templesmith's art. Kind of this weird, sort of almost abstracty style of art. But yeah, a cracking read, a cracking movie. Actually, we'll say it was a pretty good movie. But yeah, what a great story to put into board game. I want that game. You know, you fighting against violent vampires. It could be one versus many. Lots of opportunities there. And again, not a bad thing. There's a series of the comics. I've not read all of them. I read the first one. I've not actually read any of the others. It was just perfectly fine, stood on its own as a great comic. But there is more. If that whets your appetite, maybe it would. Number 6, I'm going to throw one in here for contention, is Batman. Now, yes, I hear the outcry from all of you that, well done, Mike, there is Batman board games. Well, there is. There is Batman board games, but let's be honest, most of them are shit. A lot of them miss the main point of Batman, which is he is, unbelievably or not, a detective. And he does do a fair bit of detecting aside from punching things in the comic books. Now, I foresaw this, again, as a big epic, because I like a big epic board game, but even a trilogy of board games, I think they could cover like the year one of you beginning your tenure as Batman and how that would work. I don't really know, but I like the idea. There's a huge catalogue of villains and characters that people could play in this. Now, yes, there was the Batman board game that came out recently by, I was going to say Monolith, but I don't think it was Monolith. But I'd originally looked at it and I was tempted by it because of some of the cool look of it, but essentially it fell into the trap again of just Batman punching people, and that's all it was. It's just a very big box of plastic figures, but it essentially came down to you running around and punching people. I would like something where you're solving cases, and I think if you did it over 3 big box board games that combine maybe together, the city evolving and changing and the cases escalating, and then as more characters came in, it broadening into away from basic crime to more the freaky natures of arch enemies like the Joker and Penguin and all the classics that we know. I want a decent Batman game, a decent one. I'm still on my mic cable. So we've got Batman games. I appreciate that. The DC universe on a whole has been poorly represented in the board game world, to be honest with you. Superheroes generally and Batman and the comic books generally have been poorly represented in the board game world. None of them are great. I think the closest I will come to a decent superhero board game is Sentinels of Multiverse. I think that kind of captures it right. I did care for Marvel Legendary. There is the most recent LCG from Marvel, FFG. I've not played that because it's just a money pit that I'm like, damn, I can't get into that. But yeah, Batman. I want a decent Batman game, please. So number 5 I will pick is Strontium Dog. Strontium Dog, Johnny Alpha, one of my favourite 2000 AD characters. If you don't know who he is, he's a bounty hunter set in the future, an Earth riddled, irradiated Earth, where you've got normies and muties, and the mutants having no better job essentially become search and destroy agents. And the idea of this is you've got Alpha, whose special kind of mutant ability is he can see through walls with his Strontium vision. He goes around with a Viking partner, Wolf, which he rescued from Valhalla or somewhere. I mean, the stories are out there. At some point, they even arrest Hitler in them. The very original run of them is brilliant. At some point, they made a decision to kill Alpha off before reviving him, which was just the stupidest idea in the world. But the classic initial run of Johnny Alpha is pure spaghetti western, a sci-fi western, violent. I mean, it's great characters. The interplay between them all is brilliant, and some great stories in there. There's one stands out to me. I mean, I like Alpha and the whole universe, and the characters are very cool. There was The Killing, which was a great sort of essentially Alpha and Wolf enter a contest, basically, where one man goes in a bit battle royale-ish, really, but kind of a battle royale story. That was always a classic one that stood out. I really love. So I think that lends itself very well to a board game with those characters. Brilliant. But yeah, again, Strontium Dog, 2000 AD is one of his top characters. Johnny Alpha and Wolf and a host of muties in there. excellent stuff. Drawn by, of course, by Carlos Escarrera. I may have got that wrong, but I mean, he sadly passed last year or so. A fantastic artist who has my youth was tied into that. That is if my childhood was illustrated, it'd be illustrated by Carlos. But yeah, Strontium Dog, number 5 on my list. Very cool. I want the killing board game from Strontium Dog. If anyone could sort that out. In fact, I generally would like some more to Vezinity. Generally. Number 4. We're back to Mr. Ennis, Garth Ennis, and he did The Boys, which again was a finite. It's run its course. This is far more violent, far more bloodthirsty, far more rude, far more everything than Preacher ever was. This one really isn't subtle. It is essentially about a team, The Boys, of characters that have basically, their idea is to keep superheroes in line. In this universe, superheroes are dicks. They are kind of like the idea of personalities, or Hollywood personalities, or music personalities, except the superheroes. So with all that great power comes great responsibility. Well, as it happens, they're all dicks. They take drugs, they shag things, they have insatiable needs. It is incredibly... some of it's base. I mean, some of it's not subtle. Some of it's awful. Some of it is hilarious. And The Boys kind of sets this up. I think it's a great idea of you as The Boys characters really trying to take down superheroes and trying to find their weakness without being murdered by them. I mean, there's lots of opportunity there for all good fun. TV show that came out, and that actually is very good. There's only 1 season, 6 seasons coming very soon. And I felt actually the TV show possibly did a really good job of adapting The Boys, and actually possibly may even surpass the comics in how it's done it. Really good. I cannot recommend actually the TV show enough. It was a really cracking view. It was good, and it worked very well. So much better than Preacher managed. But yeah, The Boys comic book, really great. Again, that's collectible. You can pick it up. It's all now run its course. I think it's about 80, 90 issues of it. Having a subtle jibe, a lot of comic book history in comic books as well, and lots of subtle and not so subtle nods to Marvel and DC and their heroes and stuff. And with Ennis, it always kind of loves a bit of melodrama, and it kind of runs its course into, as always Ennis does, a very violent, wild, Bunchian climax. But yes, very good read, and yes, let's have some of that. Next up, number 3 is going to be Metropolitan, which is by Warren Ellis, who's recently disgraced himself by apparently being a bit of a douchebag, but we'll pass that by for the minute. Derek Robinson, the artist. Metropolitan is essentially a sci-fi retelling of Hunter S. Thompson. You have this Spider Jerusalem, who is kind of like a gonzo journalist, come out of retirement. It's all to do with the political election of a sociopath. These things turn up quite a lot in comic books, in this cyberpunky universe with lots of crazy ideas thrown into what. Really great. It's only a fairly limited run. It's a series. At one point, Patrick Stewart wanted to star in the TV adaptation of it, which never came to pass. Very funny, very dark, very twisted. Some wonderful commentary on generally our world as it stands at the moment. And this is probably actually worth enough read now I think about it. Great stuff. I think the world is so rich and deep of that sci-fi, cyberpunky type thing of Spider's world that does lend itself to very much a storytelling-y sort of big, broad game in that universe, that world. I mean, there was so much kind of there that was never even touched on in that, and there's lots of meat for it. So maybe we can get something on that. If nothing else, it's a great series. And well worth a watch, read, thing. Yes, that. Number 2 is going to be Bone. Oh, there she blows. So Bone by Jeff Smith. So this is just amazing. This is the complete run of Bone, the original first season series of Bone. I believe there may be a few spin-offs of it. I've never read any of them, but the original Bone. This has become bedtime reading for my kids. It's kind of... It's hard to encompass. So it's as if Lord of the Rings was a comic book. It's about set on the idea of 3 bone cousins, these strange little sort of old Snoopy-esque characters. A bit of Calvin and Hobbes in there, a bit of very sort of light sort of thing. And it starts as this very light, cartoonish sort of story, and slowly over the series of the whole series, it evolves into this Lord of of the Rings style sort of massive epic adventure yarn. It's brilliant, it's hilarious, it's really well done, it's beautifully illustrated and really amazingly well illustrated thing, and like cartoon elements, and it just flows effortlessly. It's a stunning read. I mean, you can pick this up relatively cheaply. I don't know what I bought this for. I can't tell, it was about £30. I mean, if you buy that, that's a read and a half, and you will be not disappointed. That is well worth your investment into the Bone complete collection. Netflix are doing a TV series of it, which should be coming in the next few years. I hope they do it justice. I pray they do it justice. They done some good stuff. They did Dark Crystal, was very cool. Bone has been on the cards as a TV or an animated movie or something for years. Disney at one point were attached. So that alone is fantastic. But yes, that definitely lends itself for this big sort of sprawling story of the Bone Cousins and their journey in the valley and the rat creatures, and it's just a great read, a great comic, and would make a really great sort of storytelling board game, and it would be something that could work really well to the kids. It's again something that could be expanded upon as it goes. So you could start with a fairly basic sort of simplistic game that would expand into something more epic as it went along. And I'd like to see them kind of reflect that if they did a board game version of it, something that you can get the kids into early, and then kind of they could slowly grow with the game. But yeah, if you've got little ones in the house, probably 5 or 6 or so, that's great bedtime reading, really great. I've read this book many times, and it's a great way of getting them into the old comic books, if they're that way inclined. And if you've not read a comic book before, that's one I suggest you pick up. And finally, my number one in my comics that I'd love to see made into board games is of no surprise to anyone, I imagine. So it's good old stony face himself, Judge Dredd. Judge Dredd, I mean, he's been running now since the 70s. That's many years of stories, and there's some epic Dredd stories exist. Again, there's an RPG around of it at the moment. Obviously, that exists. The Royals of Just Dredd and all that. But we've had some board games. We've got the Curse Staff from Osprey, which was okay. There's Wildlands, Osprey put out recently, which again actually isn't bad as a sort of skirmishy board game, and it's got Dredd in there and some other quite cool characters. But there is so many cool characters, so many epic storylines in Dredd. It just lends itself to just this massive, big, sprawling, big box with oodles of expansions you can add. I think, you've got Mega City, and you've got all the stuff that could be going on in Mega City, and then slowly on from a micro to a macro scale, you could just expand that to your heart's content, and just so many adventures and stories and stuff that could be mixed in. Kind of, again, I think we're going into the realms of that big Ameritrash Eldritch horror style game to a certain extent. I think that how it would work. There's the old Judge Dredd board game from Ian Livingstone and Games Workshop, many years, 80s. I've got it up there, somewhere up there, which was all right, quite good. I mean, there's just how much art, there's so much comic art and characters and stuff and history, and it makes me sad that 2018 its characters have not been better represented as of now in the hobby. They're getting there. Rebellion Unplugged exists, so hopefully we're going to see some more from them. They start digging into the things and bringing out some of this stuff. But yes, Judge Dredd. If you've never read Judge Dredd, then I can't help you there. I'm going to watch the Dredd movie, the recent one, not the Stallone one. The Stallone one's not very good. Looks good, but it isn't very good. But yeah, Dredd. Love me some Dredd. I want him. A more tabletop Dredd would make me happy in some capacity. I don't care really what. Just make me some Judge Dredd games. I'd be happy. Or any 2000 AD stuff for that matter. So there you go. There is 10 comic books that I would love to be made into board games, or I think is open to. And also 10 comic books that you should have on your bookshelf and read at some point, in my opinion. And my opinion is worth whatever it is, which is not a lot around here, but it is there, all the less for you. So there we go. There is 10 of those. There's a bunch more stuff we could have mentioned. I could have mentioned Grant Morrison's new X-Men run, which was very good, which is worth a read and could make quite a good board game equivalent. What's your favourite comic book stuff? If you've got a board game comic book that you like, or is there a comic book that you would like to see made into a board game? See what I did there. Thanks for tuning in. I've been Mike B. This has been a list kind of tenuously linked to board games, but mostly to do with me to be able to talk about comic books, which is something I like to do occasionally. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And you can look at the multitudes of other videos which involve me talking about stuff of no consequence, which I'm sure will be greatly entertaining to you. Until next time, there will be another time. And now I'm really tempted to go and read Bone again. Now I've pulled it out and looked at it. What are you going to do?